We're joined by Peter Muchendu. Peter is a political commentator and analyst of things that are happening in the country. He's going to be our guest for the next hour. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning to you, Eric.
It's been a while since we last had you.
It's been, but I think it's you I've missed a bit.
Yeah.
Been here twice and you haven't been.
In my absence.
You know.
It's called bad timing. Bad timing.
You know.
Today, perfect timing.
Yes.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation again.
Asante nimeshukuru.
City has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from
the Republic of Burundi.
Mm-hmm.
If you are dancing with your rivals, don't close your eyes.
If you're dancing with your rivals, don't close your eyes.
Yes. Don't.
What's the interpretation of that, Muchendu?
I think I'll do a direct one. They might just step on your toes.
To get you out of the dance.
Yes. You know, in the tradition of where I come from, there used to be this dance known as muomboko.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where young men of these days used to go hunt for girls to marry. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way of pushing out competition was stepping on their toes.
On whose toes?
On the fellow young men as you're dancing.
Voilà.
You know?
Get them off the dance floor.
Yes, so you need to watch out, otherwise you'll be put off the dance floor. Yes.
Nice one. So what are they telling us, the Burundians, with this? What are they telling us to watch out for?
I think if you are to look at that proverb, there is a question inside there you would ask yourself, in the first place, why are you dancing with your rivals? And I think this can resonate very well with the Kenyan politics. And sometimes the kind of rhetoric that comes after elections makes you wonder why we even have elections. Because if rivals and opponents are going to dance together. So I kind of think that this would resonate very well with the Kenya Kwanza government. Trying to dance with rivals, they might just step on their toes. And in this, I am referring to the so-called talks. Yes.
Why are you calling them so-called?
I personally have my reservations, and I think I have time and again here said I have reservations in regard to those talks. Because I personally believe that if we are going to have a new IEBC, there is a provision in law that provides the process, and this provision was passed by the National Assembly. And we do not need to have talks outside the privy of the law that we have passed and owned it ourselves.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that is interesting about not just our politics, but politics, if you look at political activities, and if you look at politicians and everyone who is in that sphere, there are a great many things that they're involved in that go outside the purview of the law. Not that they abrogate the law, but they go outside the purview of the law. Why? Because, as they say, what is politics? Politics, as a definition, it is the art of what? Doing the impossible. Making possible the seemingly impossible. There is something called the reality of our constitution, the reality of our laws. We had a 2010 constitution, and one could successfully argue that over the last, 10, 15 years, what we've been doing is trying to see if this experiment called the new constitution is actually working. Now, when you put the constitution to the test, the only way you put it to the test is when you implement it or attempt to implement it. Then you see how it actually resonates. Like the discussions that we currently have with handshake or no handshake, I think it boils down to that very discussion of this presidential system that we have. Is it actually working for us? Does it represent what it was thought by those who enacted that it would? If it was working, then the fury or the furious manner in which the discussions around this particular presidential matter takes place wouldn't be there. Because it is something that people would generally have agreed upon. But that it is a constant discussion. It means, politically speaking, the reality of that law is now being faced, and it is clear that there is a need to have this discussion all over again. Not just about the presidency, but very many other things in the constitution. That is why there is always an allowance for amendments. The amendments tell you this isn't quite working the way one thought or one wanted. So let's amend it to see how that now will work.
And I don't have a problem with amending our constitution because the constitution of the biggest democracy in quotes in the world, the United States of America, has survived because of the amendments. In fact, most people in the world know the amendments more than they know the American Constitution. So amending the Constitution is not the problem. The problem is that what is that ignites that amendment? Are we igniting it based on actually honest reasons? This is why we are amending the Constitution. These talks are based on someone refusing to accept reality. And there is no way you will tell me the subsequent child that is born out of that will actually be a legitimate child that is owned by all Kenyans. I mean, look at the process we have used to get to the Constitution 2010. The Ufungamano Initiative, the Yashpal Guy, sijui Naivasha draft, sijui what draft, Kilifi draft, and all those things. But what I love about that entire process, it is because after so much deliberations, because it was based on there was a genuine push to change the constitution so that we can have a paradigm shift on our governance. And that is why we got the Constitution 2010. But the amendments that are coming, look at, it was called what? This one that was being pushed by Uhuru Kenyatta. BBI. Where was it based? It was not based on genuine reasons. It was based on a road to be able to satisfy individuals who could not accept reality. And therefore, when I say I don't have a problem with an amendment, but let it be based on genuine reasons, if at all we can actually get there as a nation. Because whenever you hear there is a clamor to change this law, most of it is not based on reason. Look at why did we hurry to change the election laws that we are now saying that we also need to change again. So for me, it's not a question of amending the constitution, because a constitution anywhere in the world is a progressive document. It continues to be amended to be in tandem with the changing times. That I don't have a problem with. I have a problem with why do we amend constitution as a nation? We are based it on somebody's refusal to accept that you can participate in an election and you can lose and live to fight another day.
Somebody else's quest to create some new offices.
This is the whole thing. This is the whole thing. It is not. I'll tell you one of the problems, and I want you to look at our constitution. We are very quick to implement changes that provides possessions. Those ones are implemented. Haraka. They are timelines in the constitution. They are implemented. But I want you to look on any change in our constitution that changes the mode of how our finance is managed.
Okay.
We don't have, look at the judicial fund. Ever been executed?
Now it's being...
Look at, we devolved health, we devolved agriculture. Did we devolve the money to pay the extension officers that we seconded to the counties, or the health officers we sent to the counties? There is always a problem in this country in terms of when anybody at the top hears money is going to be devolved. Yes, so that's the problem I have, that if we can actually implement the financial gains the Constitution 2010 gave us, we can actually get where, because devolving offices without devolving money that actually provides services to the people, it is a game, or it is just a game of musical chairs. Just devolve possessions and you don't devolve resources. What is the purpose of having county governments that
so it can come to one central problem that we're looking at here, and I
Yes.
think that comes into the crux of the matter that we're discussing this morning, is that there's so many things that are happening simultaneously.
Yes.
Right? So there is this bid to stabilize the economy. There's a lot going on. I mean, the shilling has been on free fall for the last 6 months, 6 to 9 months actually. We're looking at trying to get a handle on debt as the country, as government, as the executive, trying to make sure that, okay, well, I don't know, manage the debt that's there, and be careful about borrowing tomorrow, maybe. There are many things that are going on in terms of conversations around governance and leadership to try and be able, the talks that you talk of speaking today, BOMAS, other things, constitution of an IEBC, looking at electoral reforms. There are so many pots that are boiling at the same time. And you have an administration that's a year old who's come in and said, look, we found a mess in government, not just financially, but other things. So with that explanation that they give and the things that we are seeing today, skyrocketing cost of living, fuel through the roof, energy, crazy, are we giving the government too hard of a time when we say, you know what, get your ducks in a row? Are we being too hard on them?
Well, the truth, and these are the facts, and unfortunately that is the truth. One, when this government came in, we are already on the reds in terms of our borrowing. That's a fact. Number two, at the time this government came in, there is a limit you cannot go beyond in terms of taxing people. Because the limit that if you go beyond today taxing Kenyans more than they are already being taxed, you're looking at a revolution. And I have not seen a revolution at the 20th century that has built in a country. I want you to look at the country Egypt. The economy went back like it used to be double digits. When the revolution came, it went almost to zero. Tunisia, Venezuela, name all these countries where revolutions. And revolutions comes when people cannot put food on their table. Because these revolutions will never start with economic hardships. It starts with an empty stomach. And therefore, when this government came, it can only tax people so much. You can only borrow so much. And that is why, for me, I want to believe that I saw the other day a newspaper shouting a frying president. I think it was the headline.
It was in the Standard.
It's in the Standard, I think. But I would want to be convinced that, yes, the president is going out there. But somebody should be honest enough to tell us what is he going to do. Because if you look at his last 10 visits critically, including the last one that was that he went to Riyadh the other day, the biggest component of his visit, it is what is called investment. Because borrowing, we cannot continue to borrow the same way we are borrowing. Today, Kenyans are crying, and I have said that the biggest business for this country and for this government, it is to ensure that food cost will come down. I don't want to get into the economic jargon that they need to use. I'm not an economist. But there is one thing I know, that for Kenyans to even listen to you, for Kenyans to even get interested by any other things you are doing in terms of bringing bills to control how money is brought to the counties, that Kenyans has to have a full stomach. Otherwise, we are looking at a catastrophe in this country. We are looking at something that is going to boil down. When the NYS, the National Police Service, invites 300 applicants here and 7,000 people who have gone through NYS shows up, that does not put an encouragement face in some of us when we face
So the
public.
president's trips are to bring investors into the country.
Because that right now the only component that is going to salvage our economy. It is introducing new investment in this country.
So when should we start getting the dividend of these trips?
But you see, when you go to an investment, and I say this with utmost respect to the Kenya Invest. Kenya Invest is a government institution that is tasked with onboarding investors into this country. And June, I think Madam June is the acting CEO of Kenya Invest. For me, I think one of the things is that we need to restructure Kenya Invest because the president is going out there. He is onboarding investors. But when you onboard investors, and I have declared the same thing here, when an investor comes here, he needs to find a one-stop shop. An investor has no business lining out at Electricity House. An investor has no business lining out at Kenya Revenue Authority.
At City Hall.
He has no business going to queue at KEBS. or he has no business going to do at the special economic zone so that you can get the enterprise license to do business. These are things that Kenya Invest needs to have a one-stop shop for investors. Otherwise, those trips by the president may not yield the fruits we are looking for. If today Eric Latif is approached by this government and he comes to this country to invest $1 billion, and he finds that he needs to deal with 25 government institutions on his own to be able to start producing, it is not gonna work. You know, if you go to Rwanda Invest...
Are you saying that the president is not aware of this?
No, he is.
Now he is on to his second minister in charge of trade and investment.
Yes.
And industry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which is basically this job.
Yes.
The previous minister, Moses Kuria,
yes,
did the same number of trips. I mean, he equally traveled.
Yes.
Same way.
Yes.
Seeking to attract investors into the country.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
There's a new minister in charge of trade, Rebecca Miano.
Yes.
Doing the same.
Yes.
The president is doing the same.
Yes.
But you're saying back home, the structures are not conducive for the investors.
And I'm saying this with utmost respect.
So then
Yes.
comes my question.
Yes.
When shall we get the dividend of all these trips by the ministers for trade and by the president, the chief ambassador?
Even
our ambassadors
yes,
abroad.
I'll tell you, for investors who are coming to already established institutions who have started to invest, I'll give you an example. If today you are coming to invest at Tatu Seti, for instance, or you are coming to invest in Konza Technopolis. At Konza Technopolis, when you come, everything you need is one-stop shop.
Okay.
You need a CESA license, that is a special economic zone license, so that you are exempted from paying huge taxes, so that you're given a leeway to be able to produce, and you're given what is called a grace period of a number of years to do. If you're going to consult, right now, last week I was attending a Polish Kenyans Invest Conference here in Nairobi. We have investors who have gone to Konza to do fabrications in the new technologies of fabricating metals, windows, and what have you. That investor, he just came, brought his money, and brought his prowess. Tatu Seti has done every required licensing for him. And this is why I am saying that, yes, the president is doing what he must do. But I will also approve on His Excellency the President and the new trade minister to put the Kenya Invest House in order. And this goes out to the PS. The PS for investment is Abu Bakar. Abu is the PS investment. They need to put Kenya Invest in order so that when we are introducing an investor to come and deal with plastics, or an investor to come and deal with minerals, like the new investors you have seen in Voi, where the president opened the gem refining in company. That is an investor that the president approved on him to come from wherever he came. He is able to do that because that place has been declared a special economic zone, which means that everything you need needs to be provided by CESA so that you can be able to do business. And what I am saying in simple, the president is doing his bit in bringing investors, but I also think that he needs to crack the whip.
It's also his bit then.
It is his bit to crack the whip so that people like Kenya Invest can actually come. They need to do due diligence. You realize that today Chinese come here, they come with a very big business they want to do that is not done in Kenya. 2-3 months down the line, a Chinese who came here to produce the formula of making mattresses and supply it to those who produce, he is here producing mattresses. He is here doing woodwork. He is here doing matchboxes. He is here. That's why I'm telling you, Kenya Invest needs to pull up their socks. They need to ensure that any investor that is coming is not coming to threaten the small businesses that are being done by Kenyans. If you are inviting Eric Latif to come and invest, let Eric come and invest in a technological investment that changes the shape of a certain business, not to come and do the same thing we as Kenyans are doing. And that is the process.
Should we as Kenyans be queuing up at City Hall, at KRA?
We shouldn't. And I've always said that you need to do an online system that allows, yes, the government must come up with a mechanism of doing due diligence. That is okay, because we cannot have every Tom, Dick and Harry coming to invest in Kenya and we don't know what they do. Yes, do due diligence before Eric Ratif sets his foot on the plane to come as an investor. Do your due diligence there. Who is this investor? Is he known in his country? Is his investment known? How does he make money? How does he bank? Where does he get his money? Where does he get his performance board, advance board to start business?
I want us to take a break,
Look
Peter.
at those things.
But as we go into this break, think about this.
Yes.
Very many companies that are owned by Kenyans, many factories have shut down.
True.
Our focus is on bringing in external investors. How about looking at those Kenyan investors whose businesses have gone under and are on the brink of going under?
Yes.
What kind of support should they be getting? Should there be equal focus on them staying afloat? Should there be equal focus on going to industrial area and finding all those very many factories that are not operating at optimum capacity because of very many factors? Should we be focusing on those ones as we focus on bringing in external funding, or should we just focus on bringing in external funding?
I think
About it.
Yes.
Let's take a break. Peter Muchendu is a political analyst, and he's our guest this morning.
Spice.
This issue of the president's travel is just one of many issues where, Kenyans will raise something or the other. They'll talk about, okay, this president is making very many trips abroad. And the question that's being asked alongside that is, how much is it costing? What's the cost-benefit analysis of all these trips versus what we are getting in return? But this is just showing you that there's questions that Kenyans are asking of their government. Maybe these are the benefits of the new constitution, that, people are aware, people are able to speak, people have the freedom to express themselves, and people have the freedom to also question.
Yes.
They're questioning very many things. You question things about the office of the president. You question things about being done by the deputy president's office, the prime cabinet secretary's office, the various cabinet secretaries, basically government in general, Kenya Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Finance, the counties. Are we being unfairly critical?
I think
Kenyans being unfairly critical of
one of the things I have found to be very shallow when reporting about the presidential spending, it is that the successive, especially print journalists who have been reporting on this matter extensively, they have not told us that when you talk about the office of the president covers that spending covers three offices. It covers the office of the deputy president and the office of the prime cabinet secretary. Their budget are within the money that was reported that have been spent on travels. It is actually covering three offices: the office of His Excellency the President, His Excellency the Deputy President, and the Prime Cabinet Minister.
But they are also...
Yes,
also
I'm just
separate.
getting there.
There's a presidency, yes.
Yes.
But there's also what has been earmarked. This is going to be
what they have
spent
covered, and I'm
in the
inviting
office of
you
the
to
deputy
look at it when
president.
I'm inviting you
This
to
was-
look.
This is what to be spent by the office of the prime cabinet secretary.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm inviting you to get the documentation for the same, and you realize that the entire money mentioned in the newspapers covers the three offices.
All right.
Now, two is it is within the right and the purview of Kenyans to ask questions. That is one of the benefits of the Constitution 2010, that it gives you the ability to ask the questions you feel you have not been satisfied with, the right answers. But also, when we report that the president has spent 50 million or 60 million to travel to Riyadh or to travel to wherever, are we diligent enough to tell the Kenyans after he spent 50 million to go to this place, this is how much investment he got, and this is how much actually has now come in to the country? Because going out
Whose
there...
job is that?
Yes, going out there... You see what I'm saying is...
Whose job is it, Peter?
You see what I'm saying is... If as a reporter you want to come and report that the president was here and he spent this, you also be diligent enough to tell us he got this investment And out of that investment, this actually has come to the country.
So are you saying that reporters don't mention?
They don't.
They
They don't look at
For
those
example,
stories.
when the president was in China a couple of weeks ago,
Yes.
and it came back that there was some funding then that would come to
There was
Kenya.
signing of
as a
deals
signing
worth
of
X
deals
amount.
worth X
Yes.
amount. Was that not sufficient?
No. What I'm saying is, you know, like for instance, when the president went to China, his trip has costed, if it goes much, it has not costed above 100 million Kenya shillings. I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
But as I am a director at the Konza Technopolis, we are one of the biggest beneficiary of the trip to China, where an investor has already signed a deal, and we are breaking ground in a month of $148 million. He's coming to do something called Konza Medical City, to come and start assembling the medical gadgets, like the machines that control the pacemakers and all those things. So that is a deal that is already signed. In fact, the videos you see from China, the president at that deal signing, that is the CEO of Konza Technopolis signing the deal. $148 million investment at Konza. Vis-a-vis the amount of money the president spent to go to China. So what I am lacking, and I have not seen any reporter do, especially print journalists, it is a comparative analysis of what the president has spent vis-a-vis the amount of investment that he has brought. Is that trip worth spending that money for?
Let me tell you, Peter.
Yes.
The budget
Yes.
is a definite figure.
Yes.
It's a definite amount.
Yes.
In this financial year,
Yes.
this is the budget.
Yes.
And in that budget, there is what's going to be recurrent expenditure. There's what's going to be spent by ex-offices on
Yes.
travel and all, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
clear.
Yes.
And it ends within a year.
Yes.
The investments that have been attracted,
Yes.
by whether it's the trip individually by
Yes.
the CEO of Kenyans or the board
Yes.
of Konza Technopolis,
Yes.
or the president or the cabinet secretary in charge of
Yes.
investment,
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. The dividend is a separate conversation altogether.
Yes.
Now, should we be able to be equating everything and saying, in this 1 year, we have spent 4 trillion shillings. Out of the 4 trillion shillings budget, we have spent 2 trillion shillings on, facilitating
Yes.
conversations on investment.
Yes.
And this is how much we've attracted.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is there no office that's supposed to be doing that for us?
You see the problem, and this is assuming whatever amount His Excellency and the government officials have spent is this amount. Have they spent money outside the purview of the budget? Because the budget making process in this country starts in February, where the first budget estimates are tabled in Parliament.
Let's say they haven't.
Yes.
Let us just say that they have
Yes.
not.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Is it justifiable? That's the question.
This is the thing, and that is what I have said.
That is the question.
That is the question.
If you look
Exactly.
At today's Business
Exactly.
Daily,
Yes.
there is a supplementary budget before Parliament.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It is seeking to increase what
Yes.
budget approved
Yes.
as the financial budget for the 2023-2024 year
Yes.
from 3.6 trillion shillings will go to about 3.9 trillion shillings. Okay, we are increasing our spending.
Yes.
And in that increasing of spending, we are allocating more money
Yes.
to various offices and programs. For example, there's an allocation of extra 59 million shillings to the office of the Deputy President. The question is, when you hear that,
Yes.
while then you juxtapose that with the fact that schools have closed
Yes.
and capitation money has not been sent to schools. When you hear that there are various programs that are still lagging because of lack of funding for them, then you ask yourself, did the president have to travel? Did the deputy president have to travel? Are these travels absolutely necessary?
Must they go out for these investments to come in? Must they be the ones who are actually there for these things to happen? And if they are, then all the other officials we have, the ministers and what have you, what do they do? Secondly,
And even domestic travel,
Yes.
must we spend 8 billion shillings in the presidency.
More importantly, Peter, you say you're a director at the Conza Technopolis.
Yes.
These investments that we speak of, how exactly do they help us?
You know, let me say this, and I will say this, and I have said this again here, that I have not supported the idea of, especially for me, the domestic travels. For ministers working with 6-7 vehicles, because I think the president and the people who handle the president needs to look at a linear means of travel. In this sense, when the president, for instance, comes to my village, do you know, you start looking at anybody from the governor, from the MPs around, chief, you know, everybody. 90% of the entourage that follows the president is spending Kenyan money.
Yep.
And the question is, for instance, if the president is coming for a function for the Minister of Health, does the entire government in the county government need to stop or need to go to that event?
More importantly, does the president need to be there for that function?
Yes, you know, those are okay. When it comes to the president, I don't like. I cannot limit. He's the symbol of national unity, and sometimes he's not in the events because there is a professional role he's playing. He is in those events because he is by the law.
Peter,
and the
we are getting to a point where
yes.
we actually forget the ministers, because the president does everything that ministers should do. The president seems to do everything that
I
PSC
think one of the things, and I said here, that has lacked since this administration came, it is something that you study called the Statecraft. And the Statecraft is what allows Eric Rat, if he's a minister, it is what allows him to operate within the purviews of his ministry with authority and be able to make what is called definitive decisions and finality and everything. And that is one of the things that we continue to struggle with in the administration, that the statecraft is not working where you institutionalize power. For instance, if you are the Minister for Internal Security, there is the purview, and to these remits you have been given enough authority to make conclusive and decisions with finality. That is one of the things that is making the president being able to do everything. The president at some point will need to stop and pause and ask himself whether in actual sense he needs to be doing some of the things, or some of these things needs to be, because you know the reason why the constitution provides that there is going to be a cabinet, there is going to be permanent secretaries. In government there are two levels when you are administrative. There is the policy level and there is the implementation level. The ministers and His Excellency the President and their advisors are on what is called the policy level making. After they create and develop policies, it is the work of the permanent secretaries to be able to implement. Job number one for a PS is to be the chief finance officer of that state department.
Do I hear you to say,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
that there's lack of trust on the side of the president, of the individuals that he's appointed to make this policy and to eventually implement it? It doesn't matter where you're looking, whether you're looking in security, whether you're looking in education, industry, investment, whatever it is. Because you said, if they're actually working, you wouldn't need to see the president everywhere that you see him. Is that what you're saying? That he doesn't trust those he's appointed?
I think one of the things that I think would advise where the president has taken that position, it is the misuse of statecraft and state authority by the previous administration. If you look at the previous administration of His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta, I'll give you an example, and I say this with tremendous respect. One of the time we went to Murang'a, and the president was coming at a function, and we had the chairman of the National Water Conservation, we had the chairman of Earth Water. It was a water function. We had quite a number of chairmans. It actually surprised me that one of the guys saying hi to the president, President Amuja, siku hizi uko wapi? I am the chairman. Yeah, walikupea kazi. Then I'm like, if I go back to the act, the job of appointing a chair of a state corporation is the purview of the president. But what the president, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta did, he actually pushed all that authority to one office of the permanent secretary in the interior. He was making all the decisions, and some of the things we have seen gone wrong were being done by people who are appointed, and the president whose name and under signature appears in the Kenya Gazette does not know them. So that is where the President William Ruto is coming from, that people are given authority and they misuse it. Nonetheless, when you are administering government, there has to be a level of something called mutual trust. That if I give Eric Latif a job, I am giving him because I believe in his ability and capacity to execute. With equal measures, you must provide Eric an opportunity and a frame under which he is able to deliver on the mandate. That is one of the things in this government we have not yet, because it's good to be honest, we have not realized that ministers, and I have always said, and you remember here, as one of the against the onslaught of the honorable former interior minister, Matiang. If you remember the first time I came here, I was against the onslaught. You remember when this government came, there was an onslaught on the honorable Fred Matiang. With his shortcomings or his biasness that he looked at, the idea of going against Matiang is one of the ideas that is eating up to us now, because no government official is willing to go an extra mile for the fear of what may happen.
I'm sorry, Peter, but I think sometimes also what we do is that we're not honest in our conversation. We're not honest in the things that we are saying. That yes, there is a lot of travel being done by the president. These things are happening. We cannot run away from that.
Yes.
And that we have to ask the question about whether it's justifiable. We had a conversation early this morning about the spend that's happening in the office of the deputy president, and we have to ask ourselves, all right, if one can equate to the other, then we back off and we say, okay. But we must ask these questions, because we started off by saying, are we being too hard? But I don't think there's anything like being too hard where you have fundamentals in the country that are not working. I could talk about education until December next year. That children went to school in a new system this year and they didn't start learning until second term. That children went to school and that books were not distributed until the second week of the second term in this country. That today an exam started 22 minutes ago and there are some children whose fate is unknown in terms of whether they're going to sit it or not because attention has not been paid. All of that falls under policy. That capitation has not been given out.
Yes.
For the third term of the year that has ended already in terms of education. And nobody's asking questions. Nobody's saying this is nobody's actually giving answers as to saying this is the reason why. For a sector that has the biggest portion when it comes to the budget, nobody's asking questions. But we're focusing on, okay, he's traveled, where is he gone? We're talking about a health system for which a coverage was launched the other day, where facilities in this country today do not have running water, for crying out loud. Those are the fundamental issues that we're talking about. Those are the issues for which we should demand answers and saying, all right, fine. Sure, you've gone out and you've traveled and policy perhaps is being implemented. But what is happening in your house?
Yes.
And I think that's the question that we ought to be asking and saying, yes, you can travel and bring back investment. You're saying that there are things that have been done when you went to China, when you went to Saudi. That's fine. But what is happening in your house? Are your children eating? Are your children going to school?
The last time...
Is the roof on your house still there?
The last time
Those
I came here,
time
I was here, I'm glad that we had a conversation on health. And we had a conversation on other things. I agree with you. 100%. And I have raised this issue at the risk of being told you are fighting government. But there are two fundamental things in this country that if people are joking with, you need to crack the whip. And this has to start at the office of the president. Education and health. These are, you remember when the president Kenyatta took office, some of the three things that he promised to look at is education was one of them, and health was another, and plus housing, and of course putting food on people's tables. If you look at health, and I have asked this question in so many other platforms, that what as a government are we doing about health, considering that health in our constitution is a devolved it is a devolved function. If you want a universal health care to work in this country, the national government has to ensure county government are streamlining the health, because level 5 going down is the purview of the county government. So I agree with you, and one of the things that needs, as you have asked, needs to be asked. Yes, the president is traveling, the president is bringing investors, but equally, we have gone through parliament in a process of budgeting, and we allocated money to the free primary education. We allocated money for the externalization of the new system, that is the junior secondary. To date, there are schools that do not have junior secondary school classes. But mark you, we have budgeted 154 million shillings to every CDF in this republic. And the work of the CDF is education and security.
Peter, of what use is the allocation of this money if it never gets?
You see, let me tell you, the disease that is begetting this country, and that is what His Excellency the President must arrest today if he is going to be seen to work. Today, you see, we cannot move into a conversation of investment if we have not worked on the conversation of the needful thing for the society to happen, and that is education. It is very sad. It is actually upsetting that up to now we are at the actually kids have crossed. The only kids that are remaining in school are the ones that are doing the exams. If you have not provided capitation, the minister should be responsible. Our system has failed from, because as a citizen, I am a citizen, I am supposed to ask questions. I've donated power to my member of parliament, who is supposed to summon and speak on my behalf. We have failed in our legislature. We have failed in our implementation, that is the State Department for Basic Education, that is led by the PS, Berio Kipsang. Have they given us the reason why they have not done capitation? You know, it is sad for me to sit here and read that the newspaper that there is 750 million shillings that is being sought for the office of the deputy president, and you cannot be able to pay capitations. At that point, it beats
all
the logic.
boils down to
Yes,
are Kenyans being unfairly critical of the government.
I don't think
this
they
is
are.
where the conversation comes from.
I don't think they are.
When you look at the spending,
Yes.
and the spending is actually going up. So we've seen this even the last 10 years of Uhuru's government. Most of the time, a supplementary budget, Parliament would pass in a budget in June that we know it's going to be this amount. But by the end of the year, we are going to spend this amount. And this is what supplementary budgets have been known to do. We are seeing it again this time. There's a supplementary budget increasing the budget by 187 billion shillings. Just most of it spending. The money that you allocated for the critical social things, health, education, even ensuring that there is security, is it being prudently utilized? Are you saying that, we have realized that there is a problem with the money that is going for capitation, it's not enough, so let's go to supplementary budget and get money from this area and reorganize it in here? Because that's the whole purpose of supplementary budget, not to increase. It should be looking at reallocation.
It's also very important to be
reappropriation.
The supplementary budget is allowed to do things, two things.
We've got to go to the news. We've got to go into the news. But the main question is, if we are not talking about a supplementary budget that will impact education,
then I agree there's
and all, it's a supplementary budget that's going to spend more on training, on hospitality, on this and the other.
The currency expenditure.
Are we really on the right track?
Then there is a problem.
we have to ask the people as well to join in this conversation. In the next hour, we open the phone line 0719-012-600. It's time for the news.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.